She blocked my car on purpose and said, "You were not going anywhere." 2 hours later, the tow truck proved her very wrong. What started as a completely normal day quickly turned into one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had. I had pulled into a busy parking lot in the middle of the afternoon, the kind of place where people came and went constantly: grocery shoppers, parents with kids, delivery drivers, everyone just trying to get through their errands. I parked my car neatly within the lines, double-checked that there were no signs restricting parking, no painted numbers, no warnings of any kind. Everything about the spot looked public and perfectly legal. I locked my car, feeling relaxed and in no rush, expecting to be gone for no more than 20 minutes. When I returned, I immediately sensed that something was wrong. From a distance, my car looked different. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. A large SUV was parked inches away from my front bumper, so close that I couldn't even see daylight between the two vehicles. On the side, another car was angled in just enough to block my driver's door. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I must be mistaken, that maybe I'd parked in the wrong row. But no, this was definitely my car, completely trapped. At first, I assumed it was a careless mistake. Maybe someone parked badly and would be back any moment. I waited, scanning the lot, hoping to see someone rushing over apologetically. Instead, I noticed a woman standing a short distance away, leaning against a shopping cart, staring straight at me. She wasn't confused or concerned, she looked satisfied. Her arms were crossed tightly, her lips pressed into a thin smile that made my unease grow. I approached my car anyway, testing the door even though I already knew it wouldn't open. That's when she spoke up. Her tone wasn't friendly or curious. It was sharp, almost accusatory, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Before I could even explain or ask what was going on, she let out an exaggerated sigh, as if I had personally ruined her day simply by existing. I tried to stay calm. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, not to escalate things unnecessarily. Parking disputes happen, after all. But something about her posture, the way she watched me struggle to figure out how to leave, sent a clear message. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. As I looked around again, it became painfully obvious that there was nothing special about this spot. Other cars were parked the same way, coming and going without issue. Yet here I was, stuck, late for my next appointment, and suddenly feeling like I'd stepped into a situation I never asked for. In that moment, standing there with my car blocked and a stranger glaring at me, I realized this wasn't just bad luck. This was the beginning of a full-blown parking nightmare, and I had a feeling it was about to get much worse. I took a deep breath and approached her, choosing my words carefully. I asked, as politely as I could, if she owned the SUV blocking my car and whether she could move it so I could leave. Instead of answering like a normal person, she tilted her head slightly and gave me a look that was equal parts annoyance and superiority. It was the kind of look that said she had already decided I was in the wrong, no matter what I said next. She told me, in a loud and condescending voice, that I was not allowed to park there. According to her, that spot was reserved for residents. Even though we were standing in the middle of a public commercial parking lot with grocery carts and store signs all around us. I pointed this out calmly, gesturing toward the clearly marked storefronts and the lack of any signs indicating private parking. She immediately waved her hand dismissively, as if facts were optional in her version of reality. When I asked her who the spot was reserved by, what store, what authority, or what rule, she scoffed. She said she didn't need to explain herself to me and claimed she was protecting the community from people who didn't belong there. The way she said it made my skin crawl, like she was casting herself as some kind of self-appointed enforcer. Her voice rose just enough to draw attention, and I noticed a few nearby shoppers starting to glance over. I tried to de-escalate the situation, explaining that I had errands to run and that blocking someone's car wasn't illegal. That only seemed to fuel her. She leaned in slightly and told me I should have thought about that before parking. Then came the line that made it clear this was no misunderstanding at all. She smiled, slow and deliberate, and said, "You'll wait as long as I say you will." For a moment, I was stunned into silence. I couldn't believe someone would openly admit to trapping another person's car on purpose. I asked her again firmly, this time to move her vehicle. She crossed her arms tighter and shook her head, clearly enjoying the power she thought she had. She told me she had all day and that maybe next time I'd learn to follow the rules. Even though she still hadn't shown me a single rule I'd broken. As the conversation dragged on, her tone grew more aggressive. She accused me of being rude, of causing a scene, and even suggested that I was harassing her by asking her to move. The irony was almost laughable. Every attempt I made to reason with her was met with sarcasm or outright dismissal. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with someone who wanted a solution. She wanted control. She wanted me frustrated, embarrassed, and powerless, standing there, with my car blocked and her smug expression fixed firmly in place. It became painfully clear that this wasn't just about a parking spot. This was about ego, and she was determined to win. At first, I thought the situation would resolve itself quickly. Surely she couldn't stand there all day. I told myself, someone would intervene, or she'd get bored and move her car. But minutes passed, then half an hour, and nothing changed. I paced near my car, checking my phone, watching the time slip away. Every glance in her direction made my frustration grow. She was still there, still watching, as if this standoff was some kind of entertainment. An hour went by. My calm patience began to crack. I had places to be, calls to make, responsibilities waiting on me elsewhere. I tried speaking to her again, hoping reason might finally reach her. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording me without warning. She loudly announced that she was documenting harassment, turning herself into the victim in front of anyone who happened to be walking past. Her voice echoed across the lot, exaggerated and theatrical, drawing curious looks from strangers who had no idea what was actually happening. As more people passed through the parking lot, the scene became harder to ignore. A couple loading groceries paused to ask what was going on. When I explained that my car was blocked, they looked genuinely shocked. One man shook his head and told her she couldn't do that it was illegal. She snapped back at him, telling him to mind his own business and claiming she had permission to park however she liked. The confidence in her voice was unsettling, as if she truly believed no one could touch her. By the second hour, my frustration had turned into disbelief. She hadn't moved an inch. Instead, she seemed to be growing more comfortable, even smug. She leaned against her SUV, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up to make sure I was still there. Still stuck. Each time our eyes met, she gave a small, satisfied smirk that made it clear she was enjoying every second of this. That's when I decided I couldn't just stand there anymore. I stepped away and called non-emergency parking enforcement, explaining that my vehicle was being intentionally blocked in a public lot. While I was on the phone, she began shouting that I was threatening her and that she would call the police on me. The absurdity of it all would have been funny if it hadn't been so infuriating. As I waited for help to arrive, more bystanders gathered. Some whispered to each other. Others openly criticized her behavior. A woman with a stroller told her this was completely unnecessary and cruel. Instead of backing down, she doubled down, raising her voice even more, insisting she was in the right and that everyone else was wrong. By now, nearly 2 hours had passed. My patience was gone, replaced by a heavy mix of anger and exhaustion. She still refused to move, still acted untouchable, still believed she was in control. But as I stood there, listening for the distant sound of help on the way, I felt a shift in the air. Her confidence seemed forced now, like someone trying to hold onto power just a little too tightly. Something told me her certainty was about to be tested and that the situation she thought she controlled was slipping out of her hands. The sound of the tow truck pulling into the parking lot cut through the noise like a warning siren. And for the first time since this ordeal began, I saw real uncertainty flicker across her face. Until that moment, she had stood tall and smug, acting as though she owned the entire lot and everyone in it. But the moment she noticed the flashing lights and the heavy truck easing into a nearby space, her posture stiffened. The confidence she'd been performing for hours suddenly looked fragile. She rushed forward immediately, abandoning her casual stance and putting on a dramatic show of urgency. In a loud voice, she pointed at my car and started explaining no, accusing that I was the one parked illegally and that I had been harassing her all afternoon. Her words tumbled out fast, rehearsed, as if she'd been waiting for an audience with authority. She gestured wildly, painting herself as the victim of a situation she had clearly created. The tow truck driver didn't react the way she expected. He didn't interrupt me or side with her. He simply listened. Calmly, professionally. He asked a few straightforward questions: how long the cars had been there, whether there were any posted signs, and which vehicle had arrived last. His eyes scanned the lot, the painted lines, the complete lack of reserved markings. The more he observed, the quieter she became. When he finally spoke, his tone was neutral but firm. He explained that blocking another vehicle in a public parking lot was a violation, regardless of personal disputes or imagined rules. He pointed out that her SUV wasn't just blocking my car, it was obstructing multiple spaces and preventing access. That was when her expression changed completely. The smug smile vanished, replaced by wide eyes and frantic protests. She started backpedaling instantly. Suddenly, she claimed it was all a misunderstanding. She offered to move her car right now, but the driver shook his head and told her it was too late for that. He'd already been called. The violation was clear, and procedure had to be followed. As he walked toward her SUV and began preparing the equipment, her voice rose into near hysteria. She demanded a manager. She demanded the police. She insisted she knew people and that this wasn't fair. The crowd that had slowly gathered over the last hour watched in silence, some with folded arms, others barely hiding their satisfaction. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the narrative, and it showed. The tow truck's hydraulic system whirred to life, loud and unmistakable. That sound seemed to drain the last bit of authority she thought she had. She stood there, helpless, as her SUV was lifted from the ground. The same vehicle she had used to trap me for hours was now being taken away, piece by piece, from the situation she had so arrogantly created. In that moment, the power shifted completely. Her hours of dominance collapsed into seconds of reality. And as I watched the tow truck secure her SUV, I knew the ending she'd never imagined was finally unfolding right in front of her. The moment her SUV disappeared around the corner, the parking lot seemed to exhale. The tension that had been hanging in the air for hours lifted almost instantly. A few people who had been quietly watching shook their heads in disbelief, while others exchanged knowing looks, the kind that said justice had just been served. Someone muttered, "She brought that on herself." And for the first time all day, I felt a sense of calm return. She didn't leave right away. Instead, she stood there frozen, staring at the empty space where her vehicle had been, as if her mind couldn't process what had just happened. The authority she clung to all afternoon was gone. No SUV, no leverage, no audience to intimidate. When she finally turned toward me, her expression wasn't angry anymore, it was desperate. She demanded to know how she was supposed to get home, as if that responsibility somehow belonged to me. The tow truck driver calmly handed her a slip with instructions on where her vehicle had been taken and how much it would cost to retrieve it. The number made her gasp. Towing fees, storage fees, and a citation for illegally blocking vehicles. It added up fast. All those hours she spent refusing to move had turned into a very expensive lesson. She tried one last time to argue, insisting it was unfair, that she was just doing what she thought was right. No one responded. The silence around her was louder than any argument. I got into my car and started the engine, savoring the simple freedom of being able to leave. As I backed out of the space, I noticed her watching me, her face a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The situation spoke for itself. For hours, she had controlled whether I could go anywhere. Now, she was the one stranded, facing consequences she never thought would apply to her. Later, I learned that this wasn't her first incident. Apparently, she had pulled similar stunts before, claiming authority where she had none. This time, though, the outcome was different. The property management for the lot reviewed the incident after receiving multiple complaints from witnesses. She was officially warned and barred from parking there again. The self-appointed enforcer had finally been checked. As I drove away, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly power can disappear when it's built on nothing but arrogance. She thought intimidation and stubbornness would bend reality in her favor. Instead, it exposed her. The tow truck didn't just remove her SUV, it removed the illusion that she was untouchable. I arrived late to my appointment, but I carried something with me that made the delay feel worth it. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes patience really does pay off. In a world full of people who think rules don't apply to them, watching consequences arrive so clearly and decisively was more satisfying than any argument ever could have been. If you enjoy real stories where entitled behavior meets real consequences, make sure to subscribe. New stories like this every week.